following episode contains scenes that may not be suitable for all audiences.
Before the name Sowell even hit the presses, we were getting phone calls from a young lady, from a lady across the street from the house over a number of years, who would say, there's a foul smell in the neighborhood and it smells like a dead body. So we would then take that information and we would pass it on to the health department. And the health department would come out, and as you probably are well aware, there was a sausage factory that's still there today, right next door to the Sowell house. So evidently everybody, people just said, hey, it's gotta be the sausage. Sausage places putting out foul meat and this and that and in between. So they made raised sausage, that's the name of the sausage factory, they made them change, make a lot of improvements to their facility. The health department would get our sewer department to come out and clean the sewers out simply because of the complaint that we made.
Did you smell the smell?
Yeah, but I also thought it was coming from Ray's sausage, but it wasn't. And so Ray's sausage took a bad beating as far as financially and the city coming out making them redo their sewer, and that was a shame. That didn't nobody pick it up. But you could smell it.
In 2009, in Cleveland's Mount Pleasant neighborhood, Ray's Sausage Factory sits at the corner of Imperial Avenue and East 123rd Street. For 57 years, it's been run by the Cash family, and a lot of residents, it seems, are assuming that the foul smell covering the neighborhood is coming from its doors.
They process meat, and meat can be difficult to process. Simple enough. But as we all know, assumptions can be dangerous. And in this case, they were deadly.
Next to that sausage factory, a white house with a resident named Anthony Sowell. Back then, in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, it's common for women to go missing for any number of reasons.
People were used to that, and it allowed Sowell to kill.
If police paid just a little more attention, if there was just a little more work put in, he could have been stopped. But they didn't, and he wasn't.
We're all wired differently. Some of us are wired for good, some of us are wired for bad. But a select few step outside all of society's boundaries. From Cold Open Media, this is Deviant, Anthony Sowell, Part 1.
Welcome to Deviant, where we chase the truth into the dark corners of what humans are capable of. I'm Dan Semitovich.
And I'm Andrew Iden.
And this is the first part of a new exploration of a new Deviant, Anthony Sowell. If you don't know who Sowell is, he was convicted of killing 11 women in the Cleveland area in the late 2000s. Now, 11 is the official number, and as you'll hear as we go over the next couple of episodes, there is reason to think that that number could be higher. Before we get into the story, though, make sure you're following this show, if you're not already, on whichever podcast platform you use. Interact with us on social. There, we're putting up material that you can see and interact with and, get a sense of what we're doing and how. We're on TikTok, we're on Instagram, @deviant.podcast. Leave comments or send DMs too. We do look at them and answer them. And if you want to learn even more about the people and stories we're talking about, check out our Patreon. Visit deviantpodcast.com, and there you'll get behind the scenes information. You'll see some of the videos and documents that we're talking about in this show, and you can come hang out with us on Discord too. So check out deviantpodcast.com to see what our Patreon has to offer you. And now it's time to start the story of our next Deviant, Anthony Sowell.
There is no real reason why this story should even exist. The story of Anthony Sowell and what he did to women, how he preyed on a neighborhood, should never have been written. This is a story that shouldn't be.
It's a story that's going to make you angry. It's going to make you ask a lot of questions. You're going to want answers. How does one man, a convicted rapist, a registered sex offender with 15 years in prison, have 11 dead women inside a house in a major American city patrolled by a major metropolitan police department?
It's a story of red flags, missed opportunities, and infuriating incompetence.
It's a story of Black women, a marginalized community, and a neighborhood dealing with drugs and violence.
I'm Zach Reed. I was born and raised in Cleveland, Ohio. I became a councilman from 2001 to 2017. So I was a councilman for 17 years. And the Anthony Sowell house just happened to be in the ward, the district that I represented for 17 years. The neighborhood is called Mount Pleasant and is one of the most residential neighborhoods in the entire city of Cleveland. And as many folks know, city of Cleveland is one of the most segregated cities in the entire country, has been and continues to be. So when African Americans, Black folks, were allowed to move out of what we call the central area, the downtown central area, and move out into neighborhoods, they basically moved to two neighborhoods. One was Glenville, which is on the northeast side of the city of Cleveland, and one was Mount Pleasant, which is on the southeast side of the city of Cleveland.
Don Laster, and I live in Cleveland, Ohio, and I live in the 4th District in the Mount Pleasant neighborhood. And the Mount Pleasant neighborhood is one of the worst neighborhoods in the state of Ohio. And I live here, and I love it. That neighborhood had a lot of drugs in it, and just one of the poorer neighborhoods in Cleveland, and it's just now recovering. Cleveland was going through a lot of drug problems. Crack, I think, was the major drug. A lot of people was losing houses, and the economy was pretty bad here. It seemed like a bomb went off.
This story mainly happens in the late 2000s, and much like today, neighborhoods of color like Mount Pleasant, they're neglected, and the people who live there have a complicated, sometimes adversarial relationship with the police force.
And it's that environment and those challenges that allow Anthony Sowell to operate for so long, almost in plain sight.
He was eventually stopped, and it all happens within the space of just over a week.
That week starts on October 20th, 2009, with an absolutely insane and terrifying incident involving Don Laster, the man you heard that loves Cleveland and his Mount Pleasant neighborhood.
Here's Don Laster now, and this story he has to tell. Buckle up.
Well, that day I just left a funeral, and I was going to go on the other side for the repast. And I had two young men with me, two friends of mine. And anytime I ride past Imperial, I would ride past my house to check on it. I stopped at my house and got out, looked up and down in the yard, and everything looked good. And I got back in the car and continued to drive west on Imperial. As I went down, I stopped at the stop sign, and Anthony lived 2 houses from the stop sign. As I passed the first structure, which was Ray's Sausage, I saw something out my peripheral vision. Something fell. And I looked over, and it was a body on the ground. I immediately pulled over, and my two friends was saying, "Did you see that?" And I got out the car to see what the hell was that? What was going on? And they all got out the car with me, and we seen a female laying on the ground, unconscious, with blood coming from her mouth and her nose, and I know that's bad. And she was naked, didn't have anything on. So she fell like in a cavity and rolled off the roof. She came out the attic window, rolled off the second floor roof, and then fell and hit the ground. She just missed the fence by 1 foot. I think if she had hit that fence, she probably wouldn't have made it. So it was two young guys. They pulled out their phones and started taking pictures. I ran them off, and I wanted to get some help. But we wanted to get some clothes on her. And I asked my guys to go back to my truck and get some T-shirts that I had with my construction company on them. Got the construction shirt. Now there's a fence between me and the female. And that's when Anthony Sowell came around the corner from the back of the house, coming up I think it was about 4 or 5 feet in between the two structures. So I yelled, "What the hell going on there? Call 911." I told my friend, "Call 911."
Was she conscious?
She was unconscious. But when Anthony came around the corner, I asked him some questions. Well, I asked him, "What the hell you doing?" And he was naked too. And looking at him, I seen where he was wet from having sex. I mean, it's clear in my mind right now. And I didn't want to look at him. He was butt naked. And I asked him, "What you doing?" He said, "This is my wife, Don. We was having sex and she fell out the window." I said, "Man, you lying." He said, "I'm going to take her back in the house." And I said, "If you touch her, I'm going to jump this fence and whoop your ass." And he put her down. And I grabbed the fence and like I'm going to jump it, but I was too fat to jump it anyway. He would have got away. So we called 911. He put the shirt on her. I gave him the shirt. He put it on her. We called 911. I heard the fire trucks coming up the street because they was maybe a half a mile away from the scene. And I heard him coming up the streets. I made him pause, and he was mad. He was talking. "Man, let me take her back in the house. She'll be okay."
And he's still standing there naked.
Yeah, but she still hadn't recovered, hadn't woke up. And the 911 operator started asking me questions. Now they had the video on a 911 call. That's what they played in court. And so I turned around to stop the fire truck to let them know exactly where we were at. And I turned back around. Anthony Sowell had swooped her up and started running with her. Now, this guy was strong to be his size. He picked her up and he ran all the way down that cavity, that alley between the two houses, going back towards the back of the house. And I had to stop him. So I took off running, me and the fireman. He was right behind me. And we ran up the driveway, and he had gotten that back door, but I put my foot in it when he was trying to close it. And the fireman told me that he can't go in the house. If he closed that door, he can't go and retrieve the lady. So I struggled with the door. I got it open, and I grabbed her by the ankle because he had her almost upstairs. I grabbed her by the ankle and pulled her. And then I swung at him, and he tried to duck my punch. And then the fireman grabbed her other leg. But he was out on the porch. We had got her kind of like out on the porch, and we pulled her tug of war. And I swung at him again. Once he tried to slip my punch, we got her, and we pulled her out on the porch. And she was still unconscious. And Anthony shut the door. And they got her to the hospital.
There's a crowd of people outside who see this happen, who see her fall from the window and land on the ground below, and they see him come out after her and try and pick her up and drag her back into the house.
That's Chris Schroeder. In 2009, he's working in the Cuyahoga County Prosecutor's Office. Now he's a U.S. attorney in Alaska. He plays a prominent role in the Sowell case.
And they're yelling at him, "Leave her alone." And he picks her up, takes her back in the house. The ambulance responds. He rides with her in the ambulance to the hospital and tells the EMS technicians that he's her husband. And she wakes up 2 days later with a cracked skull and 8 broken ribs. She doesn't go to the police because he threatened to kill her if she did. And the police never followed up on the incident where a naked woman fell out of a 3rd floor window onto concrete below, and he picks her up and drags her back in the house. And isn't her husband, which was easily confirmable.
There are some reasonable assumptions to be made here. 1, after being found naked in an alley with a woman who's fallen out of his window and then fighting with bystanders while attempting to drag that woman back inside his house, Sowell is immediately arrested. That would be a good assumption, but he wasn't. 2, another good assumption. There's enough probable cause to walk into Sowell's house right then and there. On paper, that's definitely the case. But that assumption would also be wrong. They didn't. Or maybe 3, since none of that happened, police would at least be curious and follow up on the case, even if the victim of an apparent sexual assault is hesitant to come forward. That assumption, also wrong. They did nothing. What finally leads police to Anthony Sowell later that week absolutely isn't what Don Laster witnesses driving down Imperial Avenue. Instead, it's a different assault from nearly a month earlier.
Well, let me ask you this. With Lala, how come you let her go?
She didn't do nothing. She didn't do nothing to me. We didn't do nothing. I mean, when I didn't have her, I let her go.
It's Halloween, and in a downtown Cleveland high-rise, police are sitting in an interrogation room across from Anthony Sowell. They're asking him about something different. A complaint filed against him. A complaint from the previous month.
Well, when you took the cord off of her...
Cord?
Well, what was it? The wire?
No.
The cord?
Huh?
The
There was
extension?
never no cord.
Well, she has marks on her neck.
It wasn't for me.
Well, maybe not. But she's saying it's you.
It wasn't for me. She was fine when she left my house. Was nothing wrong. She left, like I said, she left. Her ride came and picked up right in front of my house.
Okay.
We was out there with 3 or 4 other people.
In late September, Latundra Billups, Lala to her friends, accuses Sowell of sexually assaulting her in his house on Imperial Avenue.
She said that we was upstairs, we was kicking it, and we started get out, and then she said, no, stop.
And you didn't stop.
That's what she said. But the girl stayed with me all day long. From 7 o'clock in the morning, she didn't leave at 5:30.
Well, what she said happened after that?
Hey, they didn't really get into it. They just said that she said I made her have sex against her will.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, hold up. She was out there with me, my friends. She was out there. I sat on that porch. I let her use my phone. She called a ride. I stayed right there. Her ride came.
What friends was she out there with you?
The people in the area.
Your friends?
I mean, her friends, they all knew her.
No, you said she was out there with you and your friends.
Yeah, me and
If
she
we
was out
talk
there
to your
with
friends,
some friends.
If we talk to your friends, could they tell us what happened?
They can tell you that wasn't nothing wrong with her.
Okay, tell me who to talk to.
When she goes to the hospital, the evidence of a sexual assault is clear. She meets with the police.
She names her attacker. She tells them where it all happened. And she also tells them about hearing that Sowell has attacked other women before. She says that when she confronts Sowell with that, he flies into a rage, and that's when he attacks her.
For 35 days, Cleveland Police Department's Sex Crimes Unit and Lala don't connect for a follow-up. In the police report, Detective Richard Durst says, quote, I'd continually miss her and her phone calls to the office. But on October 27th, Latundra Billups and the Cleveland Police Department finally connect.
One big question here. If Latundra gives police a statement the night of the assault, and evidence of the assault is clear, why do they need an additional statement from Latundra 1 month later, before finally issuing an arrest warrant for Sowell? We don't know, and despite multiple requests from us, police won't say. They're not talking, at least not yet. You're going to want to bookmark that in your mind for later.
A violent sex assault ending with a woman flying out of an upper-story window isn't enough to get authorities to the front door of Anthony Sowell's home on Imperial Avenue. But Latundra Billups' second statement on October 27th is. Things finally start to move quickly. On October 28th, police meet with prosecutors and obtain an arrest warrant for Anthony Sowell. And then, on October 29th, police arrive and walk up the 5 steps to the front porch and knock on the door. From the outside, it looks like most of the houses in the neighborhood. There's 3 floors, iron railings, a balcony. And remember at the beginning of the show we talked about Ray's Sausage Factory? Well, Sowell's house is right next door. And that's how things look on the outside. And then, police walk in.
I am Teresa Stafford. I am the Chief Executive Officer of the Hope and Healing Survivor Resource Center, which is the home of the Battered Women's Shelter and the Rape Crisis Center serving Medina and Summit counties in Ohio. October 29th, 2009. I remember this date. I was working at the Cleveland Rape Crisis Center, and we were having an open house for our new office space. And some of the sex crime detectives were there celebrating with us because we are partners, celebrating the opening of our new office space. And they got a call that they had to leave. They had a warrant that they needed all hands on deck for. And that was the night that they started discovering the bodies.
Again, here's former Cleveland Councilman Zach Reed.
when it hit, my executive assistant, she called me and said, Zach, I'm telling you, I remember that lady calling and continue to tell us there's a foul smell in the neighborhood and it smells like a dead body. So for that time, that lady knew what I now know what a dead body smells like because it never comes out of your stench. That stench never leaves you. So she must have knew what a dead body was because she was the one who said there's a foul smell in the neighborhood and it smells like a dead body.
Chris Schroeder. You heard from him earlier in the show.
First time I heard the name Anthony Sowell was the night of October 29th, 2009. It was the night that the first bodies were found in the house. It started out as a small local story because originally only 2 bodies had been found and made public. 2 bodies is a significant story in Cleveland, but it's not a nationwide story. And then over the next 48 hours, they started finding more and more and more, and 2 bodies became 4, which quickly became 6, which then ultimately became 11. And suddenly it was a nationwide story, and it was everywhere. And the perpetrator hadn't been arrested. The homeowner was on the loose somewhere.
It's not, in fact, Ray's Sausage Factory. There are 11 bodies on the property on 12205 Imperial Avenue. The man who lives upstairs isn't home, and they can't find him. And as the sun goes down and temperatures drop into a typical October night, more and more investigators arrive on the scene in Mount Pleasant. Now, everyone in Cleveland wants to know, needs to know, where is Anthony Sowell?
Next time on Deviant. Police are searching for Anthony Sowell, and as news gets out, the Mount Pleasant neighborhood, Cleveland, the United States, is trying to make sense of what is being found inside of Sowell's house. The full scope of what police have on their hands is becoming clear. Tough questions are getting asked, and everybody wants answers.
But that's bullshit,
That's not the way I
man.
felt.
Them girls are somebody's daughters.
That's not the way I felt.
Well, feel the way you feel and tell me what I need to know. God, please, man, I don't believe this, man.
Just a reminder, if you're not following the show, please hit that follow button right now. And also follow us on social. We're at deviant.podcast on Instagram and TikTok. And if you want to see some of the videos of Sowell and see some of the documents we're using to piece all this together, visit deviantpodcast.com to check out our Patreon. There, you can also learn how to join our Discord. And once you do, you can come chat with me and Andrew. Deviant is written, produced, and executive produced by Clark Goldband, Andrew Iden, and me, Dan Semitovich. Editorial and production consultation comes from Jenny Ament, with original scoring by Shuvo Sir. Marketing, sales, and distribution support come from our friends at Gemini 13. Deviant is a production of Cold Open Media.